Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and Steelers YouTube channel. To my left, Matt Williamson. To my right, Greg Macafee. Really appreciate you guys joining. How are we doing?
It's Friday.
Yeah, no complaints, man. I'm ready to roll.
It's Friday.
All right, so Steelers, we'll recap last week really quick because obviously there are some things to talk about when it comes to this upcoming game between the Steelers and Chargers. Some significant news that dropped not too long ago at the time we're recording this Friday evening, and some significant news definitely dropped. But we'll get into that here in the main segment a little bit here in just a few minutes. But 13-6, the Steelers defeated the Denver Broncos on the road. They are 2-0. Overall impressions of the game, Greg, I'll kick it to you first. What did the Steelers do well? What did they not do well? What was your overall impression of a 13-6 victory?
I mean, it was kind of, a replica of kind of what they were able to put together during week one. They ran the ball well. They took advantage of some penalties, Broncos penalties. They also committed some penalties of their own, which kind of stalled out drives. And I would say made that score number a little lower than probably what it should have been. But overall, I mean, the defense came up big again. Corey Trice getting his first career interception was huge, came in a huge moment of the game to kind of keep Denver off the scoreboard even more. But overall, I mean, I thought it was a solid defensive performance. And, as we've discussed throughout the course of this week, it seems like that dam is about to break with the offense. I mean, you could see them hit on a couple big plays that were drawn back by penalties, but I also thought there was bright spots in the run blocking game as well, where you could see big plays were about to kind of break off in a way. So I was impressed.
Matt, what about you? What did you see? What did you like? What didn't you like?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I think this defense is turning into a very dominant unit. I think we have to preface it by saying Denver's not a good football team, and their quarterback is in over their head, and they don't have very many good players. But one of their best players, Patrick Surtain, numbers don't show it, but I thought Pickens got the better of him, which is really, really encouraging. That's two of the top corners in the league back-to-back weeks that I think that, Pickens is very quickly becoming a star. There's some young guys like Zach Frazier that they're counting on, and they're coming through in a big way. Too many penalties. I mean, the three things I think they really need to get cleaned up or work on or improve in are too many penalties. They're simply just not scoring touchdowns, and explosives. I mean, make them even more detailed. I think it's too many penalties, red zone, and they have to create explosive plays. They're at the bottom of the league in those categories.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think that, it's one thing to talk in hypotheticals and to say, well, if this did happen or if this didn't happen.
Right.
But you have some actual tangible evidence. And, I've been getting some, you're trying to spin stuff for the team. I'm not trying to spin anything. There was a George Pickens touchdown literally right there scored. Yeah. If Van Jefferson doesn't commit offensive pass interference, and even then, I think in some people's eyes, that was a pretty tic-tac call. It wasn't a blatant, like he barreled the guy over. I still think it was a penalty, but either way, you have a play that produced a touchdown. You have another play that produced a 51-yard bomb if Broderick Jones doesn't do a little tug whenever he loses on a pass pro rep. So there are actual examples of what this offense can do. But like you said, they have to clean up the penalties. This cannot be a weekly thing, because it's one thing to say, well, look at the plays that we're actually converting on, but they're not actually counting because penalties don't care about stats or anything like that. They're just they're gonna back you up. They're gonna kill drives, and it's just part of it. So, but I do think that this team is fortunate to be 2-0. I had them starting off the season 1-1, whether that was a win in Atlanta, loss in Denver, or vice versa. And I think they would have been happy to be 1-1 starting off with 2 road games. But here they are. They're 2-0. They're sitting pretty. I think it's a great place for them to be. Here when we come back from kind of a short opening segment, but I don't think there's really much else. Shoot, man, 19 points were scored in the game. I don't think we really need to do much more when it comes to breaking down Steelers Broncos.
A lot of punts.
Yep. A lot of
By the way, just to bring it up, Corliss Waitman looked pretty dang good.
Very good. Yeah, very good. He looked really good.
I mean, some of the bounces that got near the end zone, you kind of wish they would have like bounced backward instead of forward. But either way, he was booting the ball. I don't care about the high elevation or whatever. He was booting the ball like crazy. They could definitely use some more of that, especially losing Cameron Johnston. That was a pretty big loss. So we're going to take a really quick break, but when we come back, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Steelers and the Chargers, not only in terms of the matchup itself, but obviously some significant injury news on both sides of the both sides for the Steelers and the Chargers. So we'll be right back right after this, and we'll get into all of that.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Alrighty, Steelers, Chargers. We'll get into the Steelers news first because this is a Steelers show after all. And Greg, you actually talked with Broderick Jones yesterday, or at least in the scrum of reporters. So the news today: Troy Fautanu injures his knee. Broderick Jones called it a little tweak. He is now questionable for Sunday, and also Broderick said that he needed an MRI. That's usually not a good sign. Maybe they're just wanting to get a closer look just in case, if it is the same knee. There's no word just yet on that. So if Troy can't go, is Broderick ready for the challenge of getting an opportunity the very next week after getting benched essentially twice?
I mean, from what I heard from him today, I wasn't down there, obviously, but just from listening to audio and things of that nature, it seems like he said that he had a pretty good week in practice. When we spoke to him yesterday, he seemed to be pretty taking account for his actions. He basically came out and said, I played bad. I played horrible. I deserved to get pulled. It was one of those games where it was just, one of those bad games. But he seemed to be bouncing back, having a good week in practice. So, I mean, if he goes out there, I would assume he'd be ready. Obviously, it's a week-to-week league at times. But, he's got to put his best foot forward if he gets the opportunity to this week. I mean, obviously, Mike Tomlin said earlier this week that he was going to get another chance at some point to rebound. With how young he is, it would be no benefit of the team to kind of just, put him on the bench and move past him. But if he gets the opportunity, he's got to go out and play.
All right, Matt, I went back and I watched the film. It wasn't just the penalties. It was not a good series for Broderick Jones. Yeah. There were some very, very bad rushing, run blocking reps, a couple of which were, gap scheme, a couple zone scheme. He had one really, really good rep that helped spring Najee on a counter or power, whatever you want to call it. But still, what does Broderick Jones need to do in order to kind of put that performance behind him? And I'm not talking about just making sure the referee isn't pulling that little yellow flag out of his pants.
No question. And he's all of a sudden at a crossroads. And I think you can look at this a couple ways. That, first of all, I thought Fautanu played really well, and so that was a promising thing. And I do think that they are planning on incorporating some 6 offensive line sets for this upcoming game, which maybe now has to get thrown out the door. I don't know. But I also think a lot of teams would be a heck of a lot worse off losing a starting offensive tackle in a Friday practice than the Steelers, who have played a lot of snaps with this guy already in his career and are familiar with Jones's strengths and weaknesses. And I also think he's a highly competitive young man that got embarrassed. And that's always dangerous in sports, that as talented as he is and as embarrassed as he should be for that short stint, that he should come back and play his best game in this one. And it's against tougher competition. But to answer your question, his technique's poor. And I think everyone knew that coming out of Georgia, that he's a raw player. And especially in protection, you see his feet get close together at times and even scissor where they'll cross. I mean, you have no leverage whatsoever. He doesn't marry them with his hands particularly well. and he kind of gets by on just being big and strong. And in the run game, that's fine. And protection in this league, that's not going to cut it at all. So he's got work to do. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that.
There was one rep that I remember specifically, and it was one where he was supposed to go get the linebacker on the second level, like straight away. Like you just, when you're reading the way it's supposed to be blocked up, especially since there's a gap scheme, like there's your man. Like you're not covered. There's your man. And his first step off the line was backwards. That's just not good technique to me. Like I don't have to be an offensive line guru in order to see that, in order to know that your first step cannot be backwards, especially when you're blocking gap. Like it just, and knowing that you have to get, go get them. Like you have to go sprint out there, and that just didn't happen. And so, I think just about everybody who is going to be cheering for the Steelers on Sunday wants to see Broderick Jones succeed if he does have to start in place of Troy Fautanu. On the other side of the ball, we have to get to this because it's very, very significant, because whether you think the Steelers are going to have a chance to win or not, this drastically impacts even more than possibly Broderick Jones starting. Justin Herbert said today he has a high ankle sprain that he suffered in the win over the Panthers. He is officially questionable, and if anybody saw the pictures, the picture that we shared on our Steelers feed on DKPittsburghSports.com, that was a heavy. I mean, they might have used
heavily
tape on that foot and ankle area. Matt, I'm going to kick it to you first, and we'll go back to Greg. What does this do for preparation if Justin Herbert can't go? Because I was thinking right away that, like, just looking at this Chargers team, that you can't just load the box because they want to run the football. It's a Greg Roman offense. It's J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. It's the Ravens 2.0 pretty much. But you can't just load the box and try to stop the run because Justin Herbert will kill you. Well, if Justin Herbert's not in there, what does this do? How does this change the way that the defense attacks them?
It's massive. And to be frank, I'm a huge Herbert fan. If we were building a football team, he'd be my 5th pick in the draft. I mean, like, he's right at the top of the league. I love him. But I don't think he's played great this year, even though they're 2-0. I mean, he's coming off that plantar fasciitis. I mean, he didn't play at all in the preseason, and they haven't needed him. And I've kind of looked at it too, like, is this Harbaugh's secret weapon? Is he going to unleash him when he needs him? Because he doesn't take the Chargers job if Herbert isn't there. Like, he knows how good this dude is. There's no question about that. But I think if he's severely limited, which I think they'd be even fortunate at that, I don't think he's going to play. That with their weapons, I think you play a lot more man coverage. You leave Minka in deep middle. You come up and put Porter in Johnston's face, who isn't nearly the player London or Sutton is, and even though he's having some numbers, you roll coverages to McConkey, and you really load up the box and make them beat you through the air the best you possibly can. And their corner situation should allow for that.
Yeah. Greg, you've been looking at the defensive side of the ball a lot this week. Whether Justin Herbert plays or not, how does this defense match up well against what the Chargers want to do on offense? Because obviously, with the way that they've been winning games, at least now, granted, they've beaten the Raiders and the Panthers, not so formidable opponents, especially the Panthers. But what does this defense need to do in order to stop this Chargers offense, or at least slow it down to try to, keep them from obviously scoring points?
Well, I mean, the Steelers have been one of the best rushing defenses in the league through 2 weeks so far. So, I mean, obviously it's strength on strength. It's iron sharpens iron there. They've been doing it through the first 2 weeks of the season, so they have to continue that. But I think, like, the versatility of the Steelers defense also lends itself to be able to kind of stop the run. Obviously, Deshaun Elliott has shown a lot of ability to get into the box and kind of play as a linebacker in a way. We saw him take down Javonte Williams on 3rd and 1 against the Broncos, and things of that nature. So it's kind of like Matt said, it's stopping the run and forcing the Chargers to beat them through the air. And obviously, the Steelers, I think, are 2nd or 3rd in the league in interceptions right now, and so they've obviously played pretty well, ball hawking. I mean, you got a bunch of ball hawks out there, and Joey Porter Jr., Minka Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson has played really well since joining the team, and DeMonte Casey as well. So I mean, I think it's a pretty stop the run and just force the Chargers to beat them through the air. If it's not Justin Herbert in the backfield, it's going to be Easton Stick or Taylor Halicke. And, just to add to it, I love the gamesmanship that Jim Harbaugh threw out there at the end of practice today. He's not committing. Earlier this week, he committed to Easton Stick as the starting quarterback. Today, he said, I'm not going to reveal any of my, my backup plans, but I've never seen anyone get ready quicker than Taylor Halicke.
Yeah, whatever it is, man. Like if it's not Justin Herbert, the game plan gets very, very simple.
Yeah.
You just load the crap out of the box.
Exactly.
And you don't because you can't do that if Justin Herbert's at quarterback, even if he's only playing on one leg, because he just will do. You can't just put 8 guys in the box. He will pick you apart. But if Justin Herbert's not back there, it really is just, okay, well, now we're going to make Easton Stick beat us.
Yes.
We're going to take away J.K. Dobbins in the run game. Now your backup quarterback is going to have to beat us. On the other side for this offense, they
real quick, Chris, if they loved Easton Stick, they wouldn't have traded for Halicke. I mean, they did that like 3 weeks ago. I mean, they just went out and got him. I mean, so I think that speaks volumes for where they're at, and who knows how up to speed he even is. The one thing, though, that I'm not going to fight you guys on, but Dobbins has made a living this year on explosive runs. Just because you have a lot of people in the box doesn't mean he can't make one guy miss and then there's no safeties to help. You know what I mean? Like, he can still take him to the house on you,
Oh, yes, for sure. And I'm not trying to discount what J.K. Dobbins is doing. I mean, and shoot, man, like, you go back to his days. I don't remember exactly what the numbers are. They're going to be in my next opponent piece later tonight on DK Pittsburgh Sports.com. But J.K. Dobbins has had success running against the Steelers while he was with Baltimore.
Yeah.
And part of that could just be, they have to account for Lamar Jackson. So the running backs feasted. Well, whatever it is, he's put up good numbers, and he's done it with Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator. So
he averages the most yards per carry of any running back with 250 carries in NFL history.
Yeah. I mean,
6.2 for his career. It's unbelievable. I mean, 9.9 now, of course, isn't going to keep up, but
he's a very, very good running back. They've got a good offensive line. Yes, loading the box is not just, okay, well, now we're just going to automatically stop the run.
Right.
But yeah, if it's not Justin Herbert back there, that's at least one thing where you can be like, okay, now we don't have to worry as much about the quarterback, beating us, where we have to respect that. Because
especially if Porter races Johnston, who I really don't think is particularly good, and you're playing 10 on 10, that favors the Steelers dramatically.
Right. So on the other side of the ball, this offense needs to get it going. They need to get some points on the board. I don't necessarily think this is the week that you're going to see it actually come to fruition. I think if they score 20 in this game, I think it's especially if Justin Herbert doesn't play. But I don't even think they'll score 20 in this game. I don't think this is going to be the game, because Arthur Smith this week talked about how he's seeing the same signs that he saw in Tennessee when he was he became the offensive coordinator there. That it took them a while to get going, but once they got going, they took off. And when they took off, it was an immediate. Like, all of a sudden, they're putting up 400 yards a game. They're scoring no less than 20. They averaged, I think, over 30 points a game over those final 10 games in 2019. They were a monster after averaging 11.5 points a game over a 5-game stretch early in the season. So, just from looking what I've looked at, it looks like this is going to be a situation in which the Chargers will prevent the deep ball. So, Greg, what are you seeing of what is the way that this offense can win in this game?
I think it's just, it's getting back to running the ball like they've done, through the first two weeks of the season. It seemed like they on that drive where Broderick Jones had 3 penalties, it seemed like they were just, 2 steps away from breaking off a big run. I think Najee Harris had about a 12-yard run at the beginning of the drive, and it looked very, very similar to Cordarrelle Patterson's touchdown run against the Lions in the preseason. Almost the exact same play. It's hitting plays like that to kind of pick up big yards and things of that nature, while also still, keeping the secondary honest of, attacking the Chargers downfield. They might not be successful, but you still got to, keep the secondary honest, try to find ways to find George Pickens deep down the field like they have through the first 2 weeks of the season.
All right, Matt, you've been watching this game a lot longer than I have. What's the best way to beat cover 2?
Well, I think the best way to beat the Chargers is attack their D-line. I think the weakest position group on this team, and frankly, one of the weaker position groups in the league, are their 300-pounders. Not their defensive front, not their edges. Their edges are excellent.
Yeah.
But they're big guys. Are a bunch of no-names. They have 6 of them on the roster. 1, maybe 2 would make the Steelers. Nobody would start on this team for their 300-pounders. And I know I'm already predicting it now. I think the Steelers win in, quote, an ugly game, and they just pound the middle of this defense, and everyone on Monday is going to complain about it. Why didn't they open the game up? Why didn't they, they play down to a lesser opponent? Because the Chargers don't have a quarterback or skill guys that are going to kill you. And if you just keep pounding the middle of that defense, you're going to not put the ball in harm's way, and you're going to be 3-0. The goal here is to be 3-0. It's not to put up 35 points.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And the Chargers do run. I was looking at the numbers earlier today. The Chargers run too high, middle field open.
A lot.
Up there with the I think they're 4th in the league right now. Now, granted, 2-game sample size, but still the trends are there. And not only do they run too high and middle field open for like the 4th most in the league, they run zone. I think only the Colts and the Cowboys run zone coverages more than the Chargers do. So you're going to get a lot of. Yeah.
What we don't know, though, is when you're playing the Panthers and there's no threat, let's just put it in zone, soft coverages. It's different than scheming things up in the 4th quarter. These last 2 games don't tell us enough about their schematic thoughts as other games would.
I would say that's true, but I do think that you do see the basic fundamentals of a defense. And so I think the best way, historically, the best way to beat cover 2 or 2 high safeties is to just run the freaking football. Mm-hmm. And the one stat that I found this week that I think is really encouraging for the Steelers, especially since you mentioned the 300-pounders up front, those 3 guys in their 3-4 defense not being so great, it being a weakness on that defense. Najee Harris, through the first 2 games of the season, is averaging almost 5 yards a carry in between the tackles. And so that to me says, okay, well, then jam the ball right down their throat. Yep. Run the ball with Najee Harris. It doesn't necessarily have to be up the middle. You can run wide zone, and he can possibly cut it back up inside, and whatever. It's still in between the tackles. Either way, run the crap out of the ball, and then the best way to beat that is to then utilize play action and beat the linebackers over the top and use that middle field open to your advantage. And that's where you can get Pat Freiermuth involved. That's where you can get George Pickens and whoever else running your posts, running whatever else over the middle of the field. So there is a way to beat those type of defenses, especially if they can't stop the run. And this does look like a game. Now, to be fair, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, very, very good. They even have good depth at edge. I think Bud Dupree's questionable for this game, but still, they have good depth at edge rushers. So, but up the middle, especially because they don't have an Landon Roberts type at linebacker either. They don't have a really great run stopper. They have a lot of athleticism, but they don't have a guy who can really step up and not do well against Najee Harris in space. I'll put it that way.
I mean, I could see this game being 9-6 at halftime, and the Steelers are averaging 3.5 yards a carry, and they're doing exactly what you said. And Acusure is starting to get pissed. What are you guys doing? You're playing against, Easton Stick. You should be blowing them out. And then in the 4th quarter, Najee's ripping off 7 yards a carry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do think. All right, well, we can go ahead and get into our predictions. Greg, I'll kick it to you first. Steelers, Chargers. We can lock this in now. We won't know about Justin Herbert for a while. He's officially questionable. You can put a prediction one way or the other, whether he plays or doesn't play. It's up to you. What do you got, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, when I submitted my prediction earlier today, it was 17-10. If Herbert doesn't play, I'm going to say 17-3. I think the run game just wears on the Chargers defense and they get in the end zone. I'd like to see George Pickens get in the end zone at least once on some type of big play. I don't know if it will happen. And I think maybe Justin Fields finds the end zone on a short run or something like that. But 17-10 or 17-10 without or with Herbert, 17-3 without Herbert. Defense has another dominating performance.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I submitted mine at 16-13 with Herbert. These are two coaches that it's a rock fight at the 50-yard line. I mean, there's not a lot of mystery with this game, but I don't think Herbert's going to play. And frankly, what I've been saying all week is I think the Steelers defense is by far the best of the 4 units, but the Chargers have a much better quarterback. So does that equal things out? Well, now we just cut one of those legs off. You know what I mean? So if Herbert doesn't play, which I don't expect he will, I have the Steelers winning 20-10. Now, I do think Harbaugh is going to try a fake punt or 7-man pressures or, I mean, he's going to be desperate. He's going to have to do some things to steal a possession or a pick six or something along those lines. So you have to be extra alert. But I think they win 20-10 with the defense ruling the day, the running game taking time, but eventually popping. And maybe it's not even that close, to be honest with you. I just don't think the Steelers put up a lot of points, period. But,
Right. I do think that obviously, so before I haven't officially submitted, but the score I was thinking before Justin Herbert possibly was ruled out, which he's not, he's still questionable, was going to be 19-17. There was going to be some sort of last second field goal that Chris Boswell kicks. There was going to be another game in which they have a lot of drives that end in field goals. They get it, one touchdown at least, but then just kick a whole bunch of field goals. I'm now going to say, 19-10. I'll say 19-9. I'll say 19-9. The Chargers at least get whether it be a touchdown and missed extra point or missed 2-point conversion or whatever in a field goal or just 3 field goals. I don't like the Chargers' chances. Obviously, if Justin Herbert doesn't play, kind of hard to envision him playing on a high ankle sprain that just.
I'm sure it'll be a game time decision, but I bet deep down they know the answer.
I mean, with it, how heavily taped it was, I'm with you, man.
And if you're 2-0 and you're the Chargers against Watt and Hayward let's give it at least a week. I don't understand playing it right.
It's not like it's Patrick Mahomes playing in a playoff game.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. If Justin Herbert and the Chargers were playing in the AFC Championship next week or playing on Sunday, then maybe he tries to gut it out and play. But I do think that we're going to see at some point on Saturday that Tyler Halicke has been elevated from the practice squad or whatever it is. And then that's going to kind of be the tell for us. I mean, okay, Justin Herbert's not going to play. So I'm going to go ahead and say 19-9 Steelers win. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a pretty game on offense. If you're looking for an offensive breakout, I don't think it comes this week yet. I still think they're working through some things. And I do think this defense is going to give them some fits when it comes to trying to stretch the field. That you're not going to see. You may see 1 or 2 explosive plays, but I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch. I think this is going to be another game in which they are committed to pounding the rock. Probably not the most efficient game on the ground. If it is, then they can put up 25, 30 points if they can average 5 yards per carry. But I think it, like you said, Matt, I kind of agree. This is going to be a game in which they average probably 3.7, 3.8 yards per carry, and they just want to dominate the time of possession, move the chains on third down. So,
lastly, though, I don't think they have a great answer for Pickens. I don't think their corners are bad, but they're smaller. I mean, if there's explosive plays, it wouldn't shock me if he ended up with 120 receiving yards when the day's done, even though it's run. There could be some splash there from Pickens.
And so if they have to do that, if they have to essentially shade a safety over the top of George Pickens, and they like to play, maybe they'll play a lot of cover 6. I don't know. And they'll put that one safety over the top of George and then drop, 2 defensive backs on the other half of the field to kind of take away Pat Freiermuth or whatever other, routes can go down the field. Whatever it is, I do think that this offense isn't quite there yet in terms of hitting explosive plays, at least through the air consistently just yet. I think Justin Fields is able to do it. He has the ability to throw that deep ball. I just don't think that they're quite there yet. It all really depends on once they get this run game figured out and they really begin to become more efficient on the ground, then I think that's when you'll start to see those plays pop more often. All right. Well, we're going to go wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us for another week. We'll be back next Friday evening to get you ready for the upcoming game. Next week they play, I think, in Indianapolis, but before then they will play their home opener at Acrisure Stadium against the Chargers on Sunday. So until next time, we'll catch you guys on the Flippity Flip.
See you guys.